At Corvallis, I had misgivings because I liked it down there, but I thought, man, I had my first child was born, a daughter was born in St. Patrick's Hospital here in Missoula, and I thought I've got to start making some money. I can't do it teaching school. So I tried my hand at real estate. I took in more money, but I didn't make any more money because there was expenses with that job. So it was, but I did it for 2 years in Missoula, and then from there I thought, well, I've got to get a better deal than this. And my wife and her mother taught me going back to teaching again. So I looked around Montana, and there wasn't any teaching job for coaches. Unless you had a specialty like mathematics or something, you know, or science. I had a social studies background and PE, and they were a dime a dozen, because you'd had not only the World War II guys doing this, you had also the guys from Korea that graduated. They were doing it, so it was tough. So I went into the placement service there. It was a private placement service in Missoula there, and the gal says, well, it's the first of the year, she says, but we've got a job for you, just what you're looking for. And I said, oh, where is it? Hopefully western Montana. She said, no, it's in Alaska. We're in Alaska. It's a town called Nome, Alaska. Where in the world is Nome? Well, it's quite a ways out. You have to look on the map. I looked on the map, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's 400 miles west of Honolulu. Because it's on the Aleutian chain that goes out there. It was headed out on that one peninsula, on the Seward Peninsula there. So I said, no. I said, I'm going to look around a little more. Well, I was getting kind of hungry, and we were living at my wife's folks' place at the time, and I knew I had to get out of there pretty soon. And well, the guy that they hired up in Nome flew in there, and he looked around Nome. Nome's opaque. They don't paint the houses. Most of the Eskimos live in Nome. It's about 2,500 people that lived in Nome, and nothing but shacks. And you know, there was a boardwalk going down, and you know, gravel street from Main Street, and I thought, holy smokes, I can't go up there, you know, but I guess I better, you know, because it paid, you know, they had a differential about 35% above Montana's pay group here, and so I had to borrow some money from a loan outfit to take the plane to Seattle and then up to Nome. And that was an experience. In those days it was a prop job, and it was, you know, a rough ride up there. And I happened to be drinking coffee before I went up there too, so I was getting sick on the way up. But we flew into Ketchikan area, and then Juneau area, and then, well, it's Sitka area. It wasn't right in Juneau there, but anyway, we got to see it, and then we flew into Yakutat, was where the Malapina Glacier is, the largest glacier in the world. And you couldn't see anything until you almost landed, because it was foggy and just plain, you know, it was in the winter time and snowing at the time. But we got in there, fortunately, and then got to Anchorage, and from Anchorage I had to stay overnight and flew up, and then flew out another 600 miles to Nome. Wow. And I saw Nome. And this time, when I got to the airport and got off the plane, the superintendent was there, the principal was there, the Chamber of Commerce man was there, the mayor was there. They were all good. They weren't going to let me go like the last guy. Just got there and took the same plane back out again.
Yeah.
And be there because they needed a teacher. And I wasn't teaching anything I was trained for. I was teaching math. And of course, to these little Eskimo kids, they weren't learning much anyway because they couldn't even speak English a lot of times. So, and a lot of times they get tired of school and they talk their parents from taking them out of school for 2 or 3 weeks. And we had to pass them anyway, that was just a requirement there, just get them out, get them through school some way or another. And not all of them were there. There was some white kids because, there were other people, the people that ran the airport and so on and so forth, they had their kids as well. But I had English was another thing I didn't want to teach, but I had that as well. And writing, which I can't write or do. But anyway.
You did it?
Yeah.
How long?
Well, it was just from that semester. And I walked, when I happened to be Al Bradshaw, which I ran track with down in Missoula, was up there teaching too. So we roomed together. He had a little house, a little shack, just a 2-room shack there. And we shared the rent on that up there. And went from there, but I applied for a job down in Valdez. There was a coaching job open, and I got the job, and I couldn't believe it, and here at head coach, and I got to teach what I wanted to teach, and so it was quite a deal. I was down there, and I brought my family up, and my second one was on the way. My first son was on the way, which had been my second child. But the plane ride up there was a little rough again, going up to Alaska, and by the time we got to Nome, my wife was ready with that kid, because she was having pains at the time. And the first night, she says, "I'm ready." I said, we just found an apartment, it was a ground floor apartment in the grocery store.
Now this is in Valdez or no?
This is in Valdez.
Yeah, Valdez, okay.
And so it was an episode of this boy of ours, Lee is his name. He's a doctor now at St. Pete's, but he came out about 5.5 pounds is all he was, because he came out early. And I had to help deliver because there was nobody in the hospital other than the doctor and his wife. She was a nurse, and she was giving me orders to do this, that, and so on and so forth. So, and it was something. We were at, the second night she was ready. The first night it was a false alarm, but the second night she said, "No, this is it this time." So we went over and got the guy out of the hotel there. He had a cab. It was a 1939 Chrysler he had. And, those old rough seats, and they were kind of dirty, always looking, even when they were new that way in those days. And the roads were nothing but one crater after another, one pothole after another. And we went down, boom, 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 and she says, "I'm ready, I'm ready."
Oh man, that's
And, it was a few blocks down there. And we got to the hospital. I'd called the doctor. He says, "I'll be there when you get there." Well, we got there before he was there. And I was rolling up my sleeves. I knew I was going to have to help deliver that baby. I didn't know what I was doing, and Wes, who was the cab driver, he was an older man. He was in his 70s at the time. Got shook, and he started honking his horn. Honk, 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 honk. And the lights from the neighbors were coming on, There was this noise outside, and the doc wasn't there yet. And the place was black. The whole hospital was vacant at the time. There's nobody in it. Because it was only, the doctor and a couple other people that ran the thing. And finally he showed up, and he said, well, what we got here? And I said, "Doc, we don't have much time." She says she's ready. He says, "Well, you pick her up and carry her back." Well, the hospital was along barracks. And at the end of the barracks, I had to carry her, which was almost a block long. and she was heavy at the time. And I picked her up out of the cab and got her back there, and then and once the doctor checked her out, boy, I'll tell you, things started moving then. He had to give her a saddle block and the whole works before that guy came out, and
What a great story.
it was something else. So
That was something else.
anyway, we had a lot of great experiences in Valdez. I had the basketball team, and they had never had a track team, and I started one. There's only about 3 of them that showed up, and by the time the state, we never had a meet because there was 35 feet of snow in Valdez that year. It had come down to about 8 feet on the level, but they had snow all over. You couldn't even walk. It was terrible. It just, you had to walk down the street to get to school when I was teaching. There was that much snow that year, and even in the spring, there was still that much snow. And this was, I didn't start training until May, because the only place you could run was on the US highway coming into Valdez. So I trained one boy, was a freshman, an Irish boy, on running the half mile and the mile. And the other boy, I trained for the quarter mile. He threw the shot and the discus. And the team that beat us in basketball for the state tournament was Wasilla. And when spring came, we beat Wasilla for the state track.
That's great.
For the Class C track meet, and so it was a great year for me. I took second and first, and with 2 freshmen. Two freshmen, but this one Indian boy was one of the greatest athletes in Alaska that I had. I had him as a freshman, and he could shoot 25-footers with no problem.
What was his name?
His name was Marvin Totemoff. His dad was killed by a neighbor, Tlingit Indian, in the community by a guy by the name of Totemoff. So Totemoff shot Popomoff. It was Popomoff who shot Totemoff. So a guy by the name of Popomoff shot Totemoff.
Well, Ken, I really appreciate telling the story, especially about your second child. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.